Hi, my name is Ekan Asin. Today we will talk about the uterine cycle. The uterine cycle is the monthly series of changes that the female uterus or uterine tissue undergoes in preparation for the implantation of a fertilized egg. Just like all other biological cycles, there are different phases, and there are three in this case. The uterine wall is made of three layers: the outer perimetrium, the middle myometrium, and the inner and thinner endometrium. Only the endometrium undergoes the changes during the uterine cycle. Altogether, the uterine cycle takes about 28 days, but this can vary from 21 to 35 days. The first phase of the cycle is menses, which is also known as menstrual phase. It's the beginning of the uterine cycle where the unneeded uterine tissue sheds. This is followed by the proliferative phase. During the proliferative phase, the endometrial tissue regenerates. And last but not least, during the secretory phase, the arteries and glands that supply the tissue regenerate. We will look into these phases in detail later on. Let's first look at the relationship between uterine cycle, ovarian cycle, and the related hormones. The ovarian and uterine cycles are tightly coordinated. Hormones secreted by the ovary at different phases of the ovarian cycle trigger changes in the uterine lining. Now let's look at each phase individually. Menstrual phase. It's also known as the bleeding phase or the menstrual period. The duration of bleeding can vary from 2 days to 7 days in different women. Usually the flow is less on the first day, increases during the second and the third day. The bleeding consists of endometrial cells, blood, vaginal cells, mucus from the cervix, and other necrotic tissue. The main reason for bleeding is the reduced ovarian hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Decreased hormones cause the endometrium to shrink. The blood vessels become highly coiled, and less blood become available to this region. The endometrial tissue degenerates and passes out of the uterus and vagina as menstrual bleeding. And next, we have the proliferative phase. Once the menstrual bleeding stops, the endometrium has about 48 hours to rest and repair itself. At this time, the endometrium is only about 1 millimeter thick. Due to the influence of developing follicle, the estrogen level starts to rise. The endometrium cells and new blood vessels proliferate and begin to increase in size and thickness. At the end of the proliferation, which is also the time of ovulation, the endometrial thickness measures about 7 millimeter thick by ultrasound. This indicates a good estrogenization and health growth of endometrium. A thickness of less than 5 mm is not favorable for the implantation of the embryo. And then we have the secretory phase of the menstruation. This phase begins soon after ovulation occurs. Under the influence of corpus luteum in the ovary, progesterone level increases. This causes the endometrium continues to grow to reach a maximum thickness of 5 to 7 mm. The important change in this phase takes place in the endometrial glands. The glands increase in size and its secretion. This secretion is rich in glycogen, fructose, and glucose. The main function is to supply nutrition to any fertilized ovum reaching the uterus. If not fertilized, An ovum will degenerate within 14 to 16 days. As the corpus luteum degenerates from the 22nd day, the estrogen and progesterone level decrease. Therefore, the endometrial growth stops. Then the endometrial cell starts to shrink and degenerate, and the next menstrual cycle starts. And here is the reference. Thank you for your patience.